Oh, hey, how's it going, everybody? I hope everybody had a good New Year's. Me, personally, I've just been going out, drinking, going on hot dates, doing the cool stuff, the typical stuff that any cool, hot, pretty charismatic guy like me would do, on New Year's Eve. Obviously, I wasn't just here in my bed, watching Netflix alone. Totally didn't do that. Never. Anyway, let's just get to the reason why we're here today. We're here to talk about Devil's Reign, one of the best, at least in my opinion, crossover event in comics ever. Written by Chip Zdarsky and beautifully, beautifully drawn by Marco Checchetto. It is honestly great. I liked it a lot. I loved it even. It's almost perfect. It's almost a perfect story. And yeah, I'm going to be talking about it, and it's going to be fun, and we're going to like it because, it's Devil's Reign, and it's Daredevil. Daredevil's the main character. You see, there's actually two stories I'm talking about here. There's the main Devil's Reign run by Chip Zdarsky and Marco Checchetto, and then there's Daredevil, Woman Without Fear. That's about Elektra, being Daredevil. It's really just a side story about her fighting Kraven the Hunter. It's pretty cool too, so I'm going to talk about that because I feel like that story is also pretty monumental to the entire run. But I'm not going to talk about like the other extra issues and the other like side stories that happen because honestly, a lot of them don't really matter and most of them are kind of boring. So I'm just going to go with the main one and Daredevil Woman Without Fear. So yeah, let's just get into it right now. Look at this baby. Damn, she is thick. It is a thick book. It is literally 6 issues of just pure peak. It's honestly amazing. I love this so much. Now look at it. Look at the title, the artwork. It looks so cool. It looks so cool. It's basically Shadowland if Shadowland was actually good. That's a reference nobody would get because I don't think anybody but me has read Shadowland. Sort of. But yeah, it's really good. So let's just get into the first few issues, shall we? Before we get into the other issues with the other comic. But I'll talk about that later. So the story begins exactly where the last issue of Daredevil left off, with Kingpin finding out that someone must have erased his mind because he originally knew who Daredevil was, and now he doesn't anymore, and that's kind of weird. And Kingpin doesn't like that, so he confronts Daredevil on this. He's like, "You did something to my mind. What did you do, asshole?" And Daredevil's just like, "I don't know what you're talking about. You never knew who I was." So, in retaliation, the Kingpin decides to ban all of superheroes. He's banning all of vigilantism. How does he do that? Well, I don't know. I thought vigilantism technically is already banned in New York, but apparently he has to super ban it because they're superheroes now, and I guess they just don't follow the law because that's what superheroes do. But whatever. He bans it, and now the government is just wrapping up all the superheroes, like not just like low-level Moon Knights and, Danny Rand, Iron Fist, who isn't the Iron Fist anymore. Like what just happened, Moon Knight gets sent to jail, Danny Rand gets sent to jail, even though he's not even the Iron Fist anymore. It's some other person right now, at least in this story. And freaking Reed and Sue Richards get sent to jail by Dr. Octopus himself. That's right, Dr. Octopus and Kingpin are teaming up for this. Not because they like each other, but because Dr. Octopus just wants all of Reed Richards' stuff. Mr. Fantastic, he has all the cool tech. And, Doc Ock, he wants that tech because, having cool tech is cool. So, they wrap them all up and they try to get the Human Torch and the Thing, and along with Valerie and Franklin Richards, the 2 kids that Sue and Reed have. Luckily, they managed to escape, not before the Thing trashing all the guards that try to get them. It was pretty cool to see that happen. Dr. Octopus isn't the only one working for Wilson Fisk. The Shocker's also working for Wilson Fisk. And in fact, a lot of supervillains are working for Wilson Fisk, but we'll get to that later. But anyway, Luke Cage and Jessica Jones and their daughter try to get away because, they don't want to go to jail. And technically, they're not really superheroes anymore anyways. They haven't worn a mask and they don't do superhero things like, Spider-Man and Daredevil. But anyway, they're trying to get away because, Fisk, he doesn't like them either. Maybe because he's kind of racist to get Luke Cage. Overthrow that. Racist Kingpin. Yeah, I'm going to stop. Anyway, yeah. So they try to get away, but Luke Cage has to help some people because there's some sort of car crash or whatever. And Luke Cage decides to help them out. Doesn't work out because the Shocker tries to arrest him. Doesn't work out because, it's freaking Luke Cage, and he just crushes the Shocker's gauntlet thingamajigs, the Shockers. Yeah, he crushes them, and then he gives a really rousing speech about how Fisk is just a thug, just like all the rest of them, and he deserves to go down as well as the other, supervillains and whatnot. This gets everybody, pretty, hyped up because Luke Cage really is the hype man. He's so cool. Afterwards, Luke Cage and Jessica get confronted by Iron Man, by Tony Stark, and he shows them where all the other superheroes are because they're all underground, because if they aren't, they're gonna get, washed up by a bunch of fucking, or at least originally supervillains who are now the heroes, because Wilson Fisk just likes to turn things on its head. And apparently now Tony, he wants to run against the mayor, because Wilson Fisk in this run is the mayor of New York. So now Tony Stark wants to run against Wilson Fisk because there's the new mayor election coming in. And, the only way to beat Wilson Fisk at his own game is by literally beating him at the polls. So this is a political story. You better get out if you don't like that. That was corny, I'm sorry. Meanwhile, Wilson Fisk has the Purple Man trapped. And apparently, the reason why he has the Purple Man trapped is because his main plan, his big plan, is basically just to make everybody just want to vote for Fisk rather than Tony Stark. Because, people don't like Fisk, but the only way he could get into office is by basically forcing people to vote for him. At least not forcing them, but by putting that suggestion in their head. Sort of like a bad headache, or a really weird voice in your head, kind of like the intrusive thoughts, if you will. That's what he wants to do to everybody in order to get back into office, so he could just keep making these BS laws against superheroes. The next issue is pretty brutal. First, Elektra, as the new Daredevil, decides to give Wilson Fisk a visit and threatens him, but Fisk calls her bluff. And it's just like, yeah, you're not gonna do anything. You're neutered. You're not the assassin that you used to be. Also, I have your files, and I've given it to somebody you know dearly. And we're gonna get into that story once we get into Daredevil Woman Without Fear. But that's not here or there right now. Meanwhile, all the other superheroes have gone on the ground and now going to the Avengers Mansion, the old Avengers Mansion, because that thing hasn't been used in years, even in comics wise. I don't think I've ever seen it. Right now they just have Avengers Mountain and the latest Avengers book. I don't even know where their thing is at. So yeah, they haven't used that thing in years. So they go there because in the basement is something that can help them, like tech and weapons, things that they could use against Fisk. And while they're there, the heroes start to talk to Tony about, him being the mayor, and they're just all agreement in saying that that's not a good idea. Tony doesn't have what it takes to be mayor. So instead, they're going to take Luke Cage and let him be mayor instead. Tony doesn't seem to like that very much. Maybe some, racism, some hints of racism, Tony. But we'll get into that in the next few issues. But yeah, Tony doesn't like that, but they all decide that Luke Cage should be the candidate instead. So they all nominate Luke Cage. And here comes the brutal part. Taskmaster and Whiplash have the Daily Bugle, the place that Spider-Man used to work out, under siege because they know that place is pretty important to Spider-Man, so they have it so that they can draw him out. Also, by the way, this isn't Peter Parker, this is Ben Reilly. There was a storyline happening in the Spider-Man comics where Spider-Man had gained a giant dose of radiation and it nearly killed him, so now he's in the doctor's office while Ben Reilly came back and is now the new Spider-Man. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'll probably make a video on that some other time. That was the entire clusterfuck of a storyline. But yeah, we'll talk about that later. But anyway, Ben Reilly, not Peter Parker, goes to the Daily Bugle and decides to fight both Whiplash and Taskmaster. It didn't really go well for him. He got his shit kicked in and was kicked out of a fucking window and crashed into a car. And that was the end of that. It was pretty brutal to see. Ben Reilly in that entire run where he was the main Spider-Man was just getting brutally owned every single time. Even in storylines that he wasn't even in. He wasn't even the main character in. So yeah, that sucks. It just things just don't go well with this guy. I guess it's because he's a clone. It must be because of clone racism or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, he got beaten up and now he's taken to the cops. Also, meanwhile, Doc Ock decides to bring in some other Doc Ocks that were inside other superheroes' bodies. That's an entire thing that happens in another side story that is also collected, but I don't want to talk about it. It's really boring and it doesn't really have a huge impact on the main storyline of this, so I'm not gonna really talk about it. But yeah, now they're like different Doctor Octopus who all decided to go Superior Spider-Man, but instead of Spider-Man, one of them has like the body of the Hulk, the other has the body of Ghost Rider, and the other has the body of Wolverine. It's super dumb, but yeah, he did that for some reason. But anyway, let's get into the other concept, Daredevil, Woman Without Fear. This one specifically. This is a pretty short, a little comic. There's only like 3 issues because it's just a miniseries. It also contains Elektra number 100 because there have been 100 issues of Elektra. And yeah, this was part of it. I'm not going to talk about Elektra 100 because that's just a little celebration of her character, but I am going to talk about these 3 issues of Woman Without Fear. Well, at least I'm going to, break it down slightly. The main gist of this storyline is basically Wilson Fisk gives her articles and all of her information to Kraven the Hunter, because Kraven the Hunter wants somebody to hunt, and why not the greatest assassins who ever lived. So they fight, and also someone from her past comes and tries to screw with her too, a lady named Akka. That was the lady who brought Elektra into the hand and tried to get Elektra to get Matt Murdock into the hand back when they were both in college. She also meets up with an old friend named Goldie, or Robert Goldman. Goldie, that's what they call him. But yeah, that was the thing. It was a pretty fun little series. Basically, Elektra beats Kraven because obviously, and Akka tries to get Elektra back into the hand. That doesn't work. They sort of fight, but Akka gets away because she's also like the greatest assassin ever. And then there's this little thing that happened where apparently Matt Murdock died by Wilson Fisk, and that's sort of a spoiler, sort of not. We'll get into that when we get back into Devil's Reign, but yeah, that happened, and that pisses Elektra off, so she slashes her sai again and makes them sharp, because for the most time when she was Daredevil, she had like dull sai that shoot out little grapple guns and stuff. It's pretty cool. But yeah, this was a neat little mini-series about Elektra and her past, and I like it a lot. The reason why I'm not going in really into depth for this entire little volume, issue by issue, is mostly because this entire crossover event is pretty long and pretty dense, and I don't want to waste too much time. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it, and it's still really good though. I still recommend it, this little one, especially if you want to collect Elektra. These are pretty important to her character growth, along with the Daredevil series. But yeah, really good one. Let's get back to the main series. Issue Triss. Not a lot happens in this issue, rather a lot and a little happens in this issue. It's actually a really quick little issue. Basically, Spider-Man gets breaking out of prison by the Human Torch and the Thing, and they manage to go back with the rest of the heroes. Meanwhile, the rest of the heroes decide that the best course of action is basically just to jump Fisk because they don't know how to deal with him, and this whole thing with him controlling people's minds isn't working out with Luke Cage's nomination, because that's going on, and Luke Cage seems to be doing pretty well, but not well enough, because Wilson Fisk has a guy that can control people's minds, and that's basically working out in favors with the polls, because the people are literally forced to go to the polls. It's really funny. It's not funny. It's actually really sad that happens and pretty ethically terrible. But yeah, that's happening. So yeah, they go to jump Fisk, but then they get reverse jumped by Otto and his other Otto guys from the other dimensions. Also, apparently Iron Man isn't actually Iron Man. It was actually the Chameleon who was doing his, chameleon thing, being somebody he isn't. And apparently the reason why the Chameleon was there is because he was working with Doc Ock, and Doc Ock wanted the Chameleon to become the mayor so he could have his little puppet mayor. Obviously that didn't work out, and they all beat up on Chameleon, at least the Doc Ocks beat up on Chameleon. The heroes realized that they are being overwhelmed, so they decide to fall back while Doc Ock gets a bunch of Octobots and basically patrols the streets along with all the Octobots. It's not really looking that well for the heroes, because now not only do they have to fight other villains who are now working with the government, they also have to fight all these robots that are basically maintaining peace and order in New York City, and it's not looking too well for all of them. Also in this issue, Fisk realizes that it wasn't the Purple Man who stole his memories. It was actually the Purple Man's kids, the Purple Children. And he realizes that, and so he asks Otto to go find the Purple Children so they can boost up the Purple Man's powers so he can control the masses at a much, higher percentage than what he was doing originally. Because the Purple Man is only one guy, but if he gets more of that power, they can really juice him up and amp him up and use him for even more nefarious purposes. My God, my mouth is so dry from talking about this. This is good, but I'm really tired, and I'm also really hungry. Give me a moment. I think I'm going to go for a lunch break. I'm back. Also, I nearly forgot Foggy, Millicent, Matt's friend, he gets jumped also as well in this book at the end of the 3rd issue. It was pretty bad to look at. I like Foggy, so seeing him being treated this terribly, it's pretty sad. All right, issue 4 happens, and, a lot of stuff happens in this issue as well. For starters, the heroes managed to break out of their little underwater prison with the help of Sue Storm, because, while Sue Storm was being managed by her lawyer, Sue Storm managed to get a paperclip in order to, break her bonds and get out. I don't know how a paperclip was used to, break those, super inhibitor collars. Apparently, Mr. Fantastic put a weakness on it, and apparently its weakness is a paperclip. So, yeah, I suppose that could work. But yeah, all the heroes that were in that jail managed to break out. Also, it's been 2 weeks, and everything was looking pretty bad for a while. Fisk gets his Thunderbolts crew, the Thunderbolts. They were once like a band of anti-heroes, and now it's just supervillains, along with U.S. Agent, who's sometimes a villain, sometimes a good guy. It kind of depends who's writing him. Right now, he's kind of a bad guy, which is, par for course for a lot of comic characters. You never know what they're going to do, especially for ones who, don't have a very long history. You know what I mean? They don't really know. The writers don't really know what to do with them. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Sorry about that. But anyway, yeah. Fisk tells the Thunderbolts to go and find the Purple Children and, arrest them so they could take their powers and put them into the Purple Man so he could use the Purple Man's powers to control the masses. It's a big thing that's going on. Also, meanwhile, the Rhino, who is part of the Thunderbolts, decides to go AWOL and go to the Champions and help them out. See, the Octobots, they don't attack anybody with the Thunderbolt badge. So the Rhino decides to put the badges on the Champions. The Champions, by the way, are like they're basically the Teen Titans of the Marvel Universe. He puts them on the Champions, and now they have Octobot immunity. It's super cool to happen. It's a pretty good development that happens. Also, Fisk manages to regain his memories of Matt Murdock with the help of one of the Purple Man's fingers, because that's how he controls people, by cutting off a piece of the Purple Man and putting it into his cool looking cane that had the diamond on it. Yeah, so the way he was able to get back his memories is basically just point the thing at him and be like, hey, I want my memories back. And that happens. And he remembers that it's Matt Murdock who's Daredevil. And now the Kingpin is pissed. He is super mad. He is big mad. All right, next issue. Issue number 5 at the penultimate issue. Anyway, the Thunderbolts managed to get the Purple Children and managed to put them into a little thingamajig that, sucks out their power and puts them into their dad's power. Also, while they were getting the Purple Children, Jessica Jones managed to intercept them and managed to get one kid out of the other 6, I believe, kids that were captured by the Thunderbolts. Also, the Abomination makes an appearance for some reason. He's also there. Jessica Jones realizes that she can't fight the Abomination and just dips with the kid along with all the other champions, and they go to, ask him how they can fight back. Meanwhile, with Fisk and Otto is basically just, insulting Fisk, telling Fisk that he's just small pickings, that Otto, he wants the big pickings. He wants to understand the bigger picture. Fisk doesn't like that. So he gets the Purple Man, who's all juiced up and amped up now, to get all the other Otto activities, because Otto has a thing in his mind which helps him resist that sort of stuff. And they start to fight Otto instead, and that's happening. And then he tells the Purple Man to just go crazy and start, wrecking havoc and causing chaos, which the Purple Man decides to agree with and goes to do that. The heroes realize they can't fight the Purple Man, so they get these receptor things that are able to make the Purple Man's voice less appealing to them, basically. It basically helps them fight back the mind control, and Spider-Man helps to fix it all up and reverse engineer it so that it could work for basically all of the heroes that are there that don't have resistance to Purple Man's mind control, like Daredevil. Meanwhile, back with Otto is trying to fight back against his other form, his other selves basically, and that isn't working. And also the Thunderbolts come along to fight Otto, but then all the heroes decide to come in. The Champions and the Avengers, they start to fight, and it's just an all-out brawl. It looks super cool. Marco Cicchetto's just going all out. It's super badass. The fights are just bleh, bleh, and there's explosions, and it's so cool, and I like it. I'm basically just a giant man baby. This comic is really good, guys. It's really good. You should buy it, and you should read it, and then you should tell me how much you like it, and then you should read some more, because it's really good. Also, meanwhile, Fisk goes on a rampage. He finds Matt's apartment and finds that Mike is living there, but because Matt and Mike are identical twins, he mistakes Mike for Matt and then fucking kills him. He like beats him to death. It's really sad to see, Mike just going out that way. He wasn't around for long, but God bless him. You died the same way you lived, like trash. Okay, that was a bit mean, but like, it's Mike Murdock. Who gives a fuck? It's Mike Murdock. Unfortunately, he does it in front of Matt's ex-girlfriend, and then, she calls Matt, Daredevil, while he was, like, out fighting all the villains in a giant street brawl, and it's just like, oh my god, Matt just died. And Daredevil's just like, what? Alright, last issue, sort of. There's also an Omega issue, but that doesn't really matter. But last issue, Matt finds out that his brother Mike is dead. So now Matt goes on a rampage. He goes to fight Kingpin. Also, Elektra, as I told you before in the last couple minutes, Elektra finds out that Matt is dead, but it's actually Mike, and she doesn't know that by now. So she goes on a rampage as well. They both meet Fisk, who's trying to get out of there as fast as he can with Typhoid Mary. Elektra throws her sai at Fisk, and it just lodges into his arm and crashes his car. And Matt comes up, and they start the brawl, and Elektra and Mary start the brawl, and it's looking pretty cool. Kingpin seems to get the upper hand and beat the ever-living hell out of Matt. Matt tries to use the Kingpin's cane that, makes people do what he wants, and tries to just tell Kingpin to see all the suffering he's caused and all the pain he's caused and inflicted. And the Kingpin just looks at Matt, and it's just like, done. And he's basically just like, he doesn't feel any regret for it at all. Matt realizes it's just like, you're a fucking monster. You're an actual piece of shit. And just wails on him, just beats the ever-living shit out of him. It's brutal to see. It's just brutal to just see him go on, just keep beating him over and over again. Until he's stopped by Elektra, unfortunately. And she's just like, you don't want to be this. This isn't something you want to be. You're not a killer, Matt. He realizes that, and then he stops. And then, everybody realizes that they've been mind-controlled by, Wilson Fisk. Also, I nearly forgot to say, there was this thing with one of the Purple Children who still have their powers, and the Purple Man, they managed to defeat the Purple Man with his kid. Oh my gosh, just count how many times I'm going to say purple. To make a long story short, they defeat the Purple Man, all the heroes are back to being heroes, and, everybody's cheering, and, Wilson seems to be going to jail because, they find out that he's trying to rig the vote, basically. Apparently, that isn't the case, however. Instead, he's taken to jail by one of his sons, Butch, who also is now the new Kingpin. Butch is trying to make a deal with the Strawman twins. Remember those guys? Those weird twins who are like 50 years old, but they act like they're 16? Those weird fuckers. Basically, they want Fisk to become the president because they want to control him. That doesn't work out. He crushes one of the guy's hands and makes one of the other one's bodyguards shoot her accidentally. And, he fights off all of their guards along with his son. And basically it's just like, listen, you're Fisk. You're also the new Kingpin. I'm leaving now because I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. Now it's your problem. And then leaves his son like a good dad would. He leaves, and him and Mary decide to go on a boat and, go wherever. I don't know. They leave the story basically. They basically kind of win, honestly. Like, Kingpin, he never really goes to jail. He never suffers so much for his mistakes. He never goes to jail or, gets punished. He just rides off into the sunset with his wife, and that's kind of sucky. Daredevil also thinks that's sucky because, he wants him to go to jail. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. But, superheroes are sort of allowed to be superheroes again. Also, Luke Cage becomes the new mayor of New York, so, that's cool. Afterwards, there's a huge funeral for Matt Murdock, who's actually Mike Murdock, but nobody knows that because they think Mike is Matt because Mike has been, trying to be Matt. Oh my god, I don't want to explain this. It's so confusing. It's hurting my head. There's a whole funeral. Everybody, mourns Matt. Not everybody, at least not the heroes who know that, Matt is Daredevil, and they're like, why are you doing this, Matt? And Matt's just like, I'm just trying to get away from, being a regular guy and just be a superhero full time. And he also wants to fight the Hand, so he's joining up with Elektra to join the Fist, who are there to destroy the Hand because the Hand wants to destroy the world for some reason. Also, the Punisher is now part of the Hand, and that's an entire different series that I don't really feel like talking about. And also, Butch comes here, and he's just like, yeah, that wasn't Matt, that was Mike. Something fishy is going on, and I'm going to find out about it. So yeah, that's something that's happening. Overall, this was a really good series. It was a good-ass crossover event. As I said before, it's great. I love it. It's one of the best I've ever read. And honestly, Chip Zdarsky, I wish you kept on writing Daredevil because your Daredevil shit is absolutely amazing. But yeah, highly recommend. Definitely read this. Also read Woman Without Fear. That's also a really good crossover event. So anyway, new video out next week. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you like, what you dislike, what you want me to talk about. And I'll see you next time.